Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on behalf of a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Saturday, June 4th, 2022. We have a lot going on, and I have just a shorter broadcast this evening for the public weather segment. Red flag warnings remain in effect for portions of central interior and the Susitna Valley. We'll highlight that in just a moment. Much cooler temperatures, some light rain overspreading the northern panhandle, creeping up from the south after record highs in those areas in the lower 80s the past couple of afternoons. We're going to see spotty showers and isolated thunderstorms across the southern interior spread into the southwest interior as we go into Sunday and Monday. And Fairbanks and Anchorage have yet both to hit 80 degrees. So far, only 79, the warmest temperature at Fairbanks and Anchorage. Other places that hit 80 degrees on Friday afternoon at Seward, thanks to a northerly offshore wind. Well, let's look here. Fairbanks, a red flag warning is currently in effect for warm temperatures, breezy conditions, low humidity, temperature 76. Can make a run at 80? Probably not yet. Willow, red flag warning there through the Susitna Valley up through Talkeetna. Mainly for the threat of dry thunderstorms. We can see those cumulus clouds building, getting that vertical development that could blossom into a shower or an isolated thunderstorm. Temperatures easily getting back up near 80 degrees. Haines, after at least two afternoons, Thursday and Friday afternoon, record highs of 84 and 83. Now it's dropped down to 60 degrees. Following a good 15 to 20 degree temperature drop in just an hour there in the Juneau area as we went through this late Saturday morning and early afternoon. Angoon in the central portion of the panhandle is cloudy with light rain and only 54 degrees. And we can see on the hazards weather map that the two red flag warnings, the one in the Susitna Valley in effect until 10 p.m. this Saturday evening, and then the one up there in the middle Yukon lower Tanana Valley in effect until 1 a.m. Sunday morning. And we still have the flood advisory in effect for the Gulkana River, the upper Copper River Basin there near Gulkana through this weekend into at least early Monday afternoon. Well, red flag warnings, as I mentioned, for dry lightning for the Susitna Valley until 10 p.m. Red flag warning for very warm, dry, and windy conditions for central interior until 1 a.m. Sunday. But we are seeing cooler and a little wetter weather overspread the panhandle, and that'll spread into the northern Gulf Coast here. As we look through the rest of this weekend, early next week, partly sunny skies, some scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms for the interior over the next several days, with periods of rain, especially along south central, northern Gulf Coast, and panhandle. Here's the fire danger. It is very high to extreme, using grass as the indicator, because this time of year, grass is the best carrier of fire once something gets going. And you can see there, especially up through the Yukon River Valley, and then areas, there are pockets of very high to extreme there south of the Alaska Range, western Kenai, and up there through the lower Susitna Valley. Satellite imagery shows that moisture spreading back toward the north and northwest across the panhandle, pushing up toward Juneau and eventually Haines. Those areas there will pick up some light showers here as we go into the Saturday night. And across the interior, the beginnings of some showers and storms popping up, a trough of low pressure running there just along south the Alaska Range. The low sitting off toward the south of the central Aleutians, and then a weak trough back up through the northwest, extending off a point lay up there in the lower Chukchi Sea. As we go through the night, we expect that trough to linger there. Showers, any thunderstorm should diminish to showers, and then redevelop Sunday afternoon along and south of the Alaska Range, and even poking into areas west of King Salmon and around Dillingham and approaching Bethel. And certainly by the time we get into Monday, there'll be some scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms along and south of the Alaska Range into the southwest interior, with breezy and drier conditions up there along the North Slope and Brooks Range. So I'm going to just go to look at the temperature maps in a broader perspective to save on some time. State perspective here for morning lows below freezing there, the north slope along the Arctic coast and there in the west side of the north side of the Seward Peninsula. Readings staying above 50 in portions of the Yukon Valley. In fact, Fairbanks did not get below 60 last night. And then on Sunday afternoon, we expect a little cooler readings there. Yukon Flats into the 60s instead of 70s. And we expect readings to be warmest there through the lower Yukon Valley, Kuskokwim Basin, especially on the west side of the Alaska Range. Still, though, some upper 70s to near 80 there in the Susitna Valley, and readings will start to recover again with some sunshine in areas of the northern panhandle like Haines and Juneau. And then Monday morning lows below freezing there, north slope, Arctic coast along outer areas of the north side there of the Seward Peninsula. Readings generally above 50 in the lower half of the Yukon Valley. And Monday afternoon, again, warmest temperatures will be out over the southwest interior, especially west of the Alaska Range, as well as up into portions of the Susitna Valley. We could see readings again into the 70s. Coolest readings will extend there along the northwest coast, Arctic coast, where it'll be tough to get much above freezing. And then 40s, mid-upper 40s, generally out along the Aleutian chain. And generally speaking, we're looking at upper 50s to 60s there in the Panhandle. And here's the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook leading up just to mid-June. June 10th through the 14th. We're still anticipating temperatures to average above to much above normal across the southwest and the west arm of the Alaska Range, up into the lower half of Cook Inlet, including the southern half of the Kenai Peninsula. Cooler temperatures along the Alcan border from the Arctic coast down through the Panhandle, and precipitation is expected to average a bit below normal there along the southwest and Alaska Peninsula, but could average a little above normal the eastern half of the state through the Panhandle, which would indicate the potential for some scattered showers and at times isolated thunderstorms.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving along, it's now time for your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned either on Sunday into Monday, we're still going to see that ridge of high pressure in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere running along and just north of the Alaska Range, and especially up along the Yukon River. This feature may not be quite as amplified as it was over the past week, but nevertheless still very warm conditions across the southern parts of the state. A little colder air is going to backdoor it in from the Canadian Arctic, so that's going to increase the pressure gradient and some winds there around the Yukon Flats, middle Yukon Valley. Meanwhile, farther north, brisk easterly winds along the Arctic coast, along with some lower clouds, areas of fog. Temperatures there staying generally near or below freezing, with IFR conditions there Sunday morning. Also, little IFR conditions possible at far north end of the Panhandle, up around Chilkoot and White, won't last long. Also back out through the eastern and central Aleutians. Sunday afternoon, though, we are going to see a little moisture working its way westward along and south of the Alaska Range, spreading westward into the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim basins. That could trigger an isolated to scattered thunderstorms with the daytime heating in the afternoon and evening. And then Monday morning, still rather widespread IFR conditions along portions of the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as into the northwestern Gulf and up between Kodiak Island and the entrance there of Cook Inlet. Otherwise, VFR conditions rather widespread across much of the mainland still. And then Monday afternoon, again, we could see some isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms popping up, intermixed with some showers, with the daytime heating covering much of the southern third or half the state south of the Yukon River and also far west end of the Brooks Range. And past conditions on Sunday, generally VFR there at Anatuvik. However, further north there in the north entrance, look for MVFR conditions to give way to VFR. Same thing, Adigan Pass, MVFR, the north entrance in the morning, giving way to VFR throughout the pass length during the day on Sunday. Lake Clark and Merrill will see VFR conditions, but again, a few showers, isolated thunderstorms may develop in and around the mountains there during the course of the afternoon and evening. Same thing at Rainy Pass, VFR generally the rule, as will be Windy Pass, but an isolated thunderstorm could develop with the daytime heating in the afternoon or evening. That extends further east through Isabel Pass. And further east, Mentasta should generally just see some dry conditions. Can't rule out, though, a few cumulus buildups, though, in that area during the afternoon and early evening. Tanita Pass, generally VFR, but also some cumulus buildups are possible. And in and around Portage Pass, generally VFR conditions giving way to MVFR along the east entrance, especially through Prince William Sound. Can't rule out some cumulus buildups or isolated showers, perhaps even a rumble of thunder. Chilkoot and White in the far north end of the Panhandle could see IFR conditions early Sunday morning, but giving way to VFR as the day unfolds. Upper level freezing levels, we have that warm dome or ridge of high pressure, so we see freezing levels at or above 8,000 feet across much of the southern mainland into southern portions of the Yukon. But notice those upper level freezing levels packed together to below 2,000 feet along the Canadian Arctic. There is a frontal boundary there. That's what's going to increase the northeast and easterly flow there across the middle and upper Yukon Valley and also along the Arctic coast in the north. Otherwise, freezing levels do fall off to 6,000 and 4,000 feet back through the eastern and central Aleutians. Icing potential, could be some isolated moderate icing, the outer southwest area of the Panhandle down through Haida Gwaii between 10,000 and 16,000 feet. And then between 5,000 and 10,000 feet there in the central and eastern Aleutians. And I just threw the thunderstorm threat in along and south of the Alaska Range. Again, thunderstorms hit or miss, but something you don't want to be flying in through, and certainly icing can be a problem there along with hail. At least small hail. And looking at the jet stream winds, nothing to speak of any major consequence across the mainland, coming down to 700 millibars, 9,000 feet. Again, the mainland, no substantial winds, a little bit of easterly winds across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. And then bringing it down to 3,000 feet, we see again winds maybe upwards of 30 to 40 knots along the Arctic coast, and also some brisker winds up through the Yukon Valley north of the Alaska Range. The greatest threat for turbulence will be up through the middle and upper Yukon Valley to the Yukon Flats, surface to 6,000 foot considerable moderate turbulence. Also could be a little bumpy there along the Arctic coast, as there will be some brisk east-northeasterly winds on the order of 20 to 30 knots. So that wraps up your flight weather for this Saturday, and if you do manage to get out, have a safe flight.
You guys got everything tied down back there? Yeah. Yep. We're going through the lee of St. Elias, so there might be some turbulence.
Fasten seatbelt sign on.
Well, who am I to tell you what to do?
There are tens of thousands of glaciers in Alaska. Some stunning cliffhangers, others wide glaciers that come down to meet the ocean tides. Some, like this one we flew over in August, are easily visible from low Earth orbit and are mesmerizing from 1,000 feet above, and have trees growing on top of their soil-laden boundaries. Those glaciers, although they represent only a fraction of the world's ice, are contributing much more than their share to sea level rise. Chris Larson and his colleagues have repeatedly measured 220 of them in a small single-engine otter, measuring their height with lasers and their depth with radar, and watching them change from season to season and year to year. But Alaskan glaciers are also different. We're only just figuring out how they all behave. Data from flights like these, part of NASA's Operation Icebridge, can help fill the gaps. Chris and radar specialist Martine Trufer are both from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and both seasoned Alaskan pilots. But they rely on their good friend and legendary bush pilot Paul Kloss and his 35,000 hours in the cockpit to fly the incredibly demanding flight lines the mission requires. And does it help you guys being pilots too?
I would like to think so, but watching Paul fly and seeing what he does, it's kind of like trying to learn quantum mechanics in kindergarten.
You know, I can fly my airplane around, but just seeing what Paul does in this extremely challenging environment in the mountains while trying to follow a specific flight line at a specific altitude above ground, negotiating winds, topography, maybe occasional low-level clouds that you have to get around, and just managing all that is just several levels above what I could do as a pilot.
Well, I think the first time I came here to this park, I was probably 4 years old with my father. I've been blessed to be able to fly in lots of places in the world, all over the place actually, almost every continent. I guess I'm always looking for some place that might be better than this, but I haven't found it.
Paul's plane is about 60 years old and is the first single-engine Otter ever retrofitted with a 1,000 horsepower engine, which makes takeoffs feel effortless and gives Paul the ability to negotiate wild terrain, which he certainly did during the first 2 incredible science flights of this campaign. And with sunny skies and relatively calm air, we covered 3 vastly different pieces of ice. While Paul fueled up the plane, Chris gave us a preview of the day's science and scenery.
So it has one of the greatest coastal reliefs anywhere in the world. So it's between the ocean and the summit of Mount St. Elias, which is 18,008 feet high. It's less than 10 miles. There's a stupendous amount of mountain right off the ocean. It's hard to beat it anywhere in the world. It might be the prettiest for me. It's absolutely stunning. From here in McCarthy, we'll cross one of the bigger precipitation gradients in Alaska too. Here it's about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and we'll go over to an area where it's on the order of 200 inches per year. So it's from one of the driest parts of Alaska to one of the wettest parts of Alaska in about 45 minutes flight time.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. You want to do Tyndall next?
Sure, where you want?
If the winds are calm now, might as well grab it.
First, we came to the rugged landscape of Icy Bay, which not that long ago wasn't a bay at all. It was filled with ice. Tidewater glaciers in this region can make dramatic advances and retreats as they feed on high rates of snowfall and then retreat as they're melted by warm ocean waters. Like the Tyndall Glacier seen here, most of these glaciers have retreated dramatically over the last 100 years. But nearby Yahtzee Glacier, after years of retreat, is currently the most rapidly advancing glacier in Alaska. Overall, though, the Icebridge Alaska surveys, from the Denali region in the north to the Juneau ice field in the southeast, have documented pretty substantial thinning of glacial ice. Areas seen here in orange and red show between about 10 and 15 feet of thinning per year.
There's a nice waterfall up there from the hanging ice.
We very first started profiling this, Paul, this gravel fan in the one in the valley next to it didn't exist.
Yeah, I was going to say,
this was
look
deep.
at all the good landing spots here.
Yeah,
There's no place to land here before.
no, it was deep water.
After covering several of Icy Bay's glaciers, given that it was time for lunch, just like that, we landed in this unforgettable spot. Flying eastward, leaving Icy Bay behind, we came to the mighty Malaspina, one of the Earth's great examples of a Piedmont glacier that spills out like pancake batter onto a broad plain as it approaches the sea. It surges at uneven intervals, creating dramatic patterns on its surface as it distorts the moraines of rock and soil borne along by the glacier. The Malaspina is less dynamic than the Yahtzee and is only melting at about the average rate for Alaska, but that could change quickly.
It has the potential for being one of the bigger geographic evolutions in Alaska. Certainly my son will be able to witness some big geography changes there. There's potential for it being connected with the ocean through some narrow lagoons, estuaries, which would take a little bit of coastal erosion, but it's not too hard to imagine that where the Malaspina Glacier is now could become a large bay.
The data that Martine's radar provides could reveal how vulnerable the Malaspina is to melting by the nearby ocean. Here we see the radar returns from the surface of the glacier, and here is something that Chris's lasers can't see, the rocky bed of the glacier, giving us both clues as to what's happening under the ice, as well as a measurement of its thickness. Finally, we came to the Yakutat ice field, 300 square miles of absolutely doomed ice perched high in the mountains. Researchers even debate how this ice field came to be at all, since in its current configuration, it's hard to imagine how it could capture enough snow to form glacial ice. And so, even if the Arctic weren't warming faster than the rest of the planet, this area would be likely to melt within a century or two. But with many other glaciers, it's easier to see the connection between a warming planet and ice loss. Thanks to data from IceBridge and other surveys, we now have a good estimate of the current rate of loss from Alaskan glaciers, 75 gigatons a year. While airborne observations over Alaskan glaciers have provided a rich record of change in the area, those efforts are now augmented by NASA's newest ice measuring tool, ICESat-2. With 6 laser beams of its own, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, the satellite will carry on the record of Alaskan change. For their part, Chris and his team will continue to do their surveys for at least the next 2 years, helping to validate the ICESat-2 data and make further detailed observations over the stunning glaciers of Alaska.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back and checking the sea ice edge in the Bering Sea. Across the north, there are areas of ice that continue to just kind of move about with the currents, but the ice is continuing to melt off and break up, especially surrounding St. Lawrence Island and up into the northeast corner there of Norton Sound. And as we get out through the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, and off the northwest coast, we are seeing areas of ice opening up. Still some shore-fast ice, and with a brisker 25 to 30 knot easterly flow there along the northwest coast between Cape Lisburne and Utqiagvik, we expect Polinias there to open up further. There could also be some shifting around and opening of the ice there as it begins to melt off and break up along the far northern Arctic coast. For the southeast panhandle, winds will generally be out of the north around 10 knots, central northern channels, waves only a foot or two there in the inner canals. And further south, south winds 10 knots, Metlakatla, Ketchikan. Otherwise, on the outer Gulf Coast, in the open waters of the Gulf, north winds anywhere from 10 to as high as 20 knots, and waves generally running 4 or 5 feet. And for Monday, we expect winds to be out of the south-southeast through the inner channels at 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. The outer coast and through the Gulf, we expect winds to be generally out of the southeast around 20 knots with waves of 7 to as high as 9 feet. Along the northwest Gulf Coast, winds will be primarily northeasterly, about 10 knots in Prince William Sound with a couple of foot waves. But off the Kenai and just east of Kodiak, we expect waves to be 5 to 6 feet with easterly winds to 20 knots at the entrance of Cook Inlet, but northeasterly up there, far north end there near Anchorage at about waves running 2 to 3 feet. On Monday, winds come down, variable 10 knots Prince William Sound as well as off the Kenai. Waves at best a foot or two in Prince William Sound, 3-4 feet off the Kenai. Variable at the entrance there of Cook Inlet, but a little more southwesterly, 10 to 15 knots, especially from around Anchor Point on up past Kenai. And across Kodiak Island on Sunday, winds will be northeasterly 15 knots in Shelikof Strait. Otherwise, generally westerly winds 15 knots on the North Pacific side with waves 4 to 5 feet, and west to southwest winds to 15 knots. Cold Bay on up toward Bristol Bay with waves of 3 to 4 feet. On Monday, northeast winds 15 knots continue there through Shelikof Strait, waves 3 to 4 feet, and then kind of a mix of winds going down along the North Pacific side with waves of 4 feet, and generally west to southwest winds on the Bering side up into Bristol Bay with waves running a few feet. The Aleutian chain rather quiet on the Bering side, variable winds around 10 knots, waves only 2-3 feet. On the North Pacific side, winds will be generally out of the northeast to north around 15 knots with 4 to 5 foot waves. And for Monday, even generally speaking, other than the eastern Aleutians around Dutch Harbor northwesterly winds at 15 knots, waves a few feet. As we get out through the central western Aleutians, 10 knot variable winds with waves just a few feet. Along the southwest coast, winds will be out of the north to 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet, including down towards St. Paul and St. George, 20 knot winds, and 3-4 foot waves in Norton Sound. On Monday, winds continue generally out of the north at 15 to 20 knots with waves 4 to 5 feet, especially in the open waters there south of St. Lawrence Island, west of Nunavik Island, down through St. Paul and St. George. And then along the Arctic coast, winds will be 20 to 25 knots out of the east, upwards to 30 knots there offshore from Wainwright and Point Lay, helping to shift ice around, and then turning northerly 15 knots and increasing to 20 knots through the Bering Strait. And then during the day on Monday, easterly winds continue 20 to 25 knots, Kaktovik through Utqiagvik, but as much as 30 knots offshore easterly flow there between Wainwright and Point Lay. And then generally winds coming out of the northwest down through the Bering Strait to the north side of St. Lawrence Island at 20 knots with waves of 4 to 5 feet. Sunday's weather has a trough of low pressure along the Alaska Range with scattered showers and a few isolated thunderstorms. Also could be a rumble thunder on the west end of the Brooks Range. And otherwise, no significant weather features. Weak low pressure way down the North Pacific south of the Gulf. And on Monday, we expect that trough of low pressure to linger with scattered showers and a few storms southern portion of the state, including the southwest interior, with areas of light rain and lower clouds along the northern Gulf Coast and in through the Panhandle. So thank you for watching tonight's show, and be sure to join me again on Sunday evening.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.